So today I am going to take you on a journey to CRM success. Actually, I'm going to take you on several journeys to CRM success. What we're going to look at during this journey to CRM success in this 45 minutes is a little bit about a journey to CRM success. I'm also going to give you some hints and tips about how you can guide a client or your employer on that journey to CRM success. And we're going to look at my individual journey to becoming the CRM success catalyst. And we'll also look at your journey to CRM success. And during all of that, I'm going to share some highs and some lows with you. So on that journey, we are going to see a number of different things. But before we can really embark on this journey, we need to understand a little bit about what CRM success is. And if you were to ask a crowd of people, what is CRM success, you will get different answers from almost everyone in that crowd. Salespeople, if they say anything positive, will focus on ease of use. A project manager will probably focus on going live on time and being on, or better still, under budget. A customer service person is likely to mention having easy access to customer history. And company executives will probably mention reporting. Other people in our crowd will have other ideas. But what I find most worrying about this sort of question is that when we ask technical implementers what is CRM success, they nearly always struggle with the question. So these are people that are working day in, day out with CRM or a CRM, and they really struggle to know what CRM success is. So I'm now going to show you what I think of as CRM success. So when we think about the success of a CRM project, we must remember why the organization in question embarked on the project in the first place. There will have been some business drivers, some business reasons that the organization was prepared to invest, usually substantial sums of money, in the project. Achieving these aims are the best definition of CRM success. So that is meeting the scope of the project. The solution should also solve business problems, but then in the vast majority of cases, those problems will have been in the scope. What is probably the best marker of CRM success is that users are using the solution. In other words, they have changed at least a little bit how they are working, and they are now using the new solution and are using the solution happily. So to me, that is CRM success. So Now we have got some idea of CRM success. I like to think of CRM success as the bit you can see above the water of the iceberg. And as many of you will know, that is approximately a tenth. But we then have what is below the iceberg. And that is the key to CRM success. So what can we expect if we were to take a deep breath and dive down beneath the water surface next to that iceberg? What would we find? I believe firmly that CRM success can be described by an acronym PLUCKED. So PLUCKED is planning, leadership involvement, understanding, communication, and team. And when we read that downwards, we get plucked. So now I'm going to explain to you what is plucked. The first part of plucked is planning. And a key part of planning is knowing your destination. So just like all of these buildings are worth visiting, and depending on your interests and where you've been previously, you will have preferences. Similarly, there are lots of different aims for a CRM project. But regardless, it is essential that the destination is known. This is the importance of scoping your project. A project without scope is a journey without a destination. And a journey without a destination is a great way to waste both time and money. A journey without a destination is not a great way to start a CRM project. So once we've got a destination, the next part of planning is knowing how you're going to get there, or which route are you going to take. There are pretty much always multiple ways to get from where you are to where you need to be. So which one of those routes will you choose? Which one of those routes will deliver the best results? And then why does this one deliver the best results? Why is this the way that you have chosen? Some people argue that because of Agile, we don't need to worry about all of this planning. That is wrong. Agile is an awesome methodology when it is used correctly. However, too often it is grabbed as a way of appearing to please everyone. I've been invited in to rescue projects where the underlying cause was agile, and I put agile in quotes because, of course, it's not agile as a methodology. It is agile. We'll show you a bit of the solution. You tell us what you want changed. We'll make the changes and we'll repeat that ad nauseam. And just like going on a journey without a destination, using that as agile, which it certainly isn't, is not. Doing that is when agile becomes fragile. Agile is an approach, And when it is used, it delivers fantastic results, but only if it is used with rigor. Agile is not a way to avoid scoping, documentation, testing, training, or anything else. Actually, there can be more need for scoping, documentation, testing, and training, because with Agile, we are delivering results to our end users more quickly. And consequently, we're going round and round and round more quickly. And there may well therefore be more time spent scoping, more time spent testing, more training, and more documentation. The next step, the L in plucked, is leadership involvement, which is absolutely critical. And leadership involvement means real involvement, so that other team members and other members of staff see leaders showing the way. They see leaders active in the project and setting an example. When this happens, other people will follow. This means that when the leaders truly demonstrate the importance of the project, participate in the training, and of course use the solution, the project has a far greater chance of achieving user adoption and hence success. It absolutely mustn't be figurehead leadership. I've seen many projects fail because key people do not adopt that leadership. Now we move to the middle of plucked. And to me, this is the most important part of plucked. And U is understanding. Understanding is perhaps the biggest of the keys to success. CRM projects tend to go wrong for 3 sets of reasons. And those 3 sets of reasons are a lack of understanding of how the business functions, a lack of understanding of how to do a CRM project, and a lack of understanding of the selected technology. I talk about this as being all roads lead to Rome. A few months ago, I did a presentation that looked at a survey done in 2019 that analysed 25 reasons that projects were said to fail. I distilled those 25 reasons down into those 3 lacks of understanding. So understanding and true understanding is very, very important. Understanding is far more than just passing exams, and far more than collecting badges and awards. Awards are useful, but only if they encourage you to dig into the subject matter and drive to real understanding. When I train people prior to exams, I get them to know about all of the presented options. I then get them to work through why most of those options are wrong. And from there, it's a very short jump to knowing the correct answer. And with that approach, even when the questions change slightly, you will have that depth of understanding, so you will still be able to get it right. If you rely on parrot learning, that you will be much more likely to trip up. There are two key sides to learning any topic well. And those two concepts are why and how, which is more detail. When I speak to a lot of people, they are very unaware of this concept and detail approach. They are often under the misconception that if I talk about education and education for lots of people in the organization, what I'm wanting is that everybody in the organization knows all the nitty-gritty details of how to use CRM. That is obviously unnecessary. However, it is necessary for everyone to understand the key whys. And for the more business-focused people to understand whys of technology, and for technology-focused people to understand the whys of business. Once you get that, communication and ideas can flow between the two of them. And that alone will shrink down the time frame required for projects and so save money. It's also worth understanding what I call the ladder of expertise. So for anything that you want to learn, you typically come in as a novice, and then you learn a bit, and then you're an advanced beginner, a bit more you're competent, more you're proficient, and finally you can call yourself an expert. So the level of understanding where I'm looking at everybody having more understanding, I'm probably only talking about you being an advanced beginner in those topics where you're not known or you're not engaged to be an expert. We now move on to the C of plucked. And the C of plucked is all about communication. We've got to keep everyone informed of what is happening in the project. Make sure that they are aware of what they need to know, what they need to do. And certainly keep a very large group of people across what is happening and, even more importantly, why it's happening. But that's the broader aspect of communication. We also need to have communication within the team. And that communication within the team is, of course, aided by that platform of understanding. Business people having some level of understanding of the technology, and technology people having understanding of the business and the business drivers, means that the communication can happen a lot more effectively. A few years ago, I was on a Microsoft CRM, probably at the time, project, and 6 months in, the technical team who'd been on the project for the whole of that 6 months did not know how the organization for whom they were implementing Dynamics 365 or Microsoft CRM made their money. They got so little knowledge of the business side of the project that they really couldn't answer even basic questions about what the organization did. And now we move to the final part, and that is that the team. So the T of plucked is that the whole team must work together to one goal. A few years ago, I was on a project and we had a business analyst. Now, many projects do have business analysts, and many business analysts are very good. This particular business analyst knew almost nothing about the business and even less about the technology. She spent her days running between where the business users sat and the technology people sat and just passing messages. So she managed to push what should have been one team into two parts, and she was the only one who was allowed to go into both areas. So not surprisingly, that project dragged on and didn't deliver on goals. So that is plucked, and they are the areas that you need to have in place if you are to achieve CRM success. And CRM success is, in my book, users being willing and happy to use the solution that you have supplied. So plucked is the acronym that will help you remember all of that. I'm now going to go on and talk a little bit about my journey to being your CRM success catalyst. Without a shadow of a doubt, that journey has had its ups and its downs. It's a journey that I've been traveling now for about 30 years. One of the mistakes that I made, one of the downs, is that I let all my certifications lapse because I was seeing too much from the perspective of the prospect, and prospects didn't know about the certifications and really didn't care. The mistake that I'd made, of course, is that the certifications are worth far more for what they do to you, or to me in this case, than they are to prospects. I also made the mistake of focusing too hard on salespeople, because salespeople are very rarely the project decision makers. Yes, they're involved in projects, but they are not the decision makers. I also made a mistake that many people make, and that is giving away too much time. And between all of those points combined, plus a few others, that left me a few years ago almost facing bankruptcy. But I didn't give up. And I love this quote: I didn't come this far to only come this far. I certainly didn't. I kept going, and I've really, over the last probably 3 years, I have springboarded into being your CRM success catalyst. So from a position where I had let a lot of my certifications lapse, I now have 5 of the current exams, and I have a lot of other exams that are older. I even have 3 of the 1.2 Microsoft CRM exams, and there probably aren't many people on this conference who've got those. Those exams have given me a handful of Microsoft Certified Functional Consultant Awards. And just before Christmas, I got the coveted MB600, the Solution Architect, the 3-star Dynamics Award. I've also renewed my MCT a couple of times. I've got a bunch of Click Dimension certifications. Also, in the middle of last year, I achieved my Distinguished Toastmaster. Now, that's not a technology certification. It's not directly CRM related, but certainly working towards that has given me a lot of the soft skills and the things that I use day to day. So that also has been very valuable. So my CRM journey, what did I achieve on my journey to being your CRM success catalyst? This journey has taken me about 30 years. It is almost 30 years ago since I started working in America. And at that job, I was running a support desk. And when I got there, there was no technology to support us at all. All we had was pen and paper, and not a great deal of that. So as part of that project, part of that role, I developed a simple CRM type database. And that was probably the beginning of my CRM journey. Since then, I have learned an awful lot about CRM, about Microsoft CRM, but also about other technologies. I was working, implementing both Clarify and Siebel. And of course, there was that early system that I developed in America. I've also had the luxury of traveling. And that traveling, 21 years ago, it brought me from the UK to Sydney. But I've also traveled within my role. And twice I have been to 4 countries and delivered 5 days of training inside a week. They're what I call my shock weeks. Shock being Stockholm, Helsinki, Oslo, and Copenhagen, because I did all 4 cities, 4 countries in a week. More recently, of course, I've learned a lot about Dynamics 365 and about Power Platform. I've also learned a lot about business, about sales, about marketing, and about branding. And I've learned a lot about how people learn and how to enable learning for others. I've also spoken at events. I've spoken at virtual events like this one, and I've spoken at in-person events, including Microsoft Ignite last year, before we all got slammed into lockdown. But most of all, what I have learned is about me, about myself. So, what will you learn as you step out into your journey of CRM success? Where will your CRM success journey take you? What will you experience on the way? I really hope that you will share the stories of your CRM success journey. And to make that a little bit easier, as I would love to share that with you, here are my contact details. And I will now hand back to our presenters, but of course I will stay here and I am very happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Gil. That was really an inspiring presentation. And I think you have really conveyed, the essence of your 30 years experience. It was a great learning for myself, and I hope the audience shared the same experience as well.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Yes, there are a few questions here. I'll quickly run you down there.
Sure.
So the first question is like, if from your experience perspective, if you have to identify 3 major problems why CRM implementations fail, how you would like to respond to that?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. They're not 3, they're groups of reasons rather than 3 reasons. And that came from a survey done. So it was 25 reasons that I then looked at those 25 reasons and distilled them down into the 3 broad groups of reasons.
That was great. I hope that will answer the question. Agile versus waterfall, which one you will prefer?
Right. Okay. That is an absolute, there is no one right answer. And it does depend on the destination that you're trying to get to. Agile has got lots of short releases. However, each of those releases that we put into production must deliver something of use to the end user. So sometimes there is a project that to get to a point where you can give the users anything of use, you've got to do this much of scope. And if you're going to do this much, it will probably end up being waterfall. Maybe a relatively small waterfall, but nevertheless, it's waterfall. However, once you have delivered that, let's call it minimum viable product, we can then take that and deliver a bit more and a bit more and a bit more and a bit more in an agile way. So I firmly believe that it's a mistake to say, I'm going to use agile or I'm going to use waterfall. That's a bit like saying, I'm going to wear a t-shirt today, regardless of, you might look outside and it's really, really raining or even snowing. Sure as eggs, you're not going to go out with a t-shirt, or at least not only a t-shirt. So there is definitely no one right answer.
Thank you so much. I think you responded that one excellently. We have another question, which is a slightly lengthier one. I'll try to read it out for you. What is your take on customization requests from the business users just to ease their daily functions? What is your recipe of success to avoid unnecessary customizations?
Awesome question, Yasir. And how I respond to that, to a degree, will depend on whether that's a user that just knows who I am and just comes up to me, maybe meets me when I'm getting a coffee, which is something I do quite frequently. And, could you just please, Jill, could you add this new value into that pick list or do this or do that? If it's that sort of approach, I would probably gently shove them towards the appropriate approach to get that logged and then later on as appropriate. If the request does come through more official channels, then one of the questions that I like to respond to those questions with is, well, I'll do various things. Sometimes I'll say quite simply, why do you want that, whatever that might be, and get an answer. But I then will often follow up with how much will it cost the business, whatever that means, if we don't do it. And again, that is pushing back onto the user. Does this change, whatever the change might be, offer real benefit? Or is it just I, as an individual, because of the way I work, think it would be better if we had that field over there instead of where you've put it, or an extra value in a pick list or whatever. So again, it is challenging. But if one way or another we can get to a conclusion that there is real business value in making the change and it's come through the proper channels, for sure I will do it. Again, it's a cost benefit, because if all we're doing is moving a field or putting another value in a pick list, the cost of doing that is really quite low. So on the balance of probability, it will deliver more to the business than the cost of doing it. But sometimes there are things that seem very simple on the part of a user, and our technical knowledge is such that we know that it will cause other problems, or that it's actually a lot of work. So it always depends.
That's absolutely a great answer. Just the one follow-up, I think I will take it as the last question, like any suggestions which you can make to control the scope creep as they use this term. I think it's pretty somewhat related to this customization thing, but if you would like to respond to that.
Scope creep usually comes about when the original scoping wasn't done particularly well. And it may be that the wrong people were involved in the scoping. It may be that various other changes have happened in the business. But in general, control of scope creep needs to be handled in a way that you take we have been engaged to deliver ABC at the moment. I understand that you would really like D, E, and F, and I can see some value in D, E, and F, but D, E, and F are going to have to wait until we've done ABC. We've got agreement that ABC are working and are necessary. Then we can look at putting together essentially another project, albeit a small project, and then we can deliver D, E, and F, or one of them, or whatever.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Thank you so much for your valuable advices. And I hope next year we will not run into the glitch. We really apologize for that. And hoping to see you next year, or even sooner than that, on our platform for taking so much advantage from your knowledge, which you have just gave us a glimpse of, I think, the whole the arsenal that you have there. Thank you so much. If you have any concluding remarks, that would be great.
I'm very happy to let whoever follows on from me now to have the floor. So I will head back to the airport and fly away from Pakistan, and I will hand back to you, Crm.
100%. Thank you so much. And I think that's the journey that we can make in this COVID situation. At least we can, that was a very good, way of saying that. Thank you so much, Gil.
Thank you, Crm.